Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. In this video, we will go through the roadmap, letting you know exactly what has changed. As always, a big thank you to all of my patrons. You guys are incredible. Thank you so much for your support. If you do want to support the channel even further, be sure to follow that link to my Patreon page below. So we've had some new updates to the roadmap finally. It still doesn't include the addition of 4.1 and 4.2, but it does give us a much clearer picture of what is intended for 3.9 and 4.0. With that said, let's take a look at what is new. So for 3.8 and just ships, kicking off with the last remaining ship of 3.8, the Carrack is now at 142 tasks out of 186. So there's 44 tasks remaining, which is great news. It's made some great progress and it looks like it's coming along perfectly for February. Now on to 3.9. For characters, the mission giver Eddie Parr, who is going to be found around Microtech, he is at 9 out of 29 tasks. Obviously, he is probably needed for when they bring the interior online, giving us something to do around Microtech. The Microtech collection, which is clothing and armor styles found around Microtech and worn by its inhabitants, likely cold weather clothing, and also hopefully the armor set from CitizenCon. That is at 6 out of 7 tasks, so there's only one more to go there. This will obviously be needed for when players become affected by temperature as well, so it's going to be important clothing. Moving on to locations, the Klesher Automated Prisons, that is at 58 out of 72 tasks, so it's coming along very well. It'll be exciting to see how this plays out when we finally get it. New Babbage Interiors are at 93 out of 245, so there's a long way to go there, but it will be great when we can finally land at New Babbage and have a look around. The planet does seem a little desolate at the moment as there is nothing really to see there. Also, Microtech's new moons, which we have heard a little bit about in the most recent Inside Star Citizen. We have Clio and Euterpe. They are both at 8 out of 15 tasks, with Calliope at 7 out of 15. And I'm looking forward to seeing if they're a little more diverse than what we have already. Anyway, moving on to AI. There are a couple of new AI features in 3.9. The Ship AI 3D Navigation Collision Avoidance, this is at 1 out of 3, so the idea here is to provide a system that can allow AI entities to reciprocally avoid each other, while at the same time avoid collisions with the environment. The system considers the projection in time of the position of the agent, their size and their target velocity, and provides a steering command that is as close as possible to the original intention of each agent. Sounds complicated. It just means they're going to be more aware of what's around them, take into consideration the size of their ship, the speed and direction they're traveling at, and then give them an appropriate command to either avoid or whatever, navigate around. Because it is the AI inside the ship that controls the ship. It is not the ship that is doing the controls. The next one is Ship AI 3D Pathfinding Planetside, and it says, building the fundamental tech to allow AI-controlled ships to navigate in atmosphere using information from physics and the planetary tech. It goes on to say the path search will use data from the elevation map of the planet and the physical information about the additional objects present in the map, so buildings, rocks and so on, to return an obstacle-free path. So basically just allowing them to fly around in atmosphere, which is going to be really cool. Obviously, these are complementary additions. The FPS cover usage and weapon types was pushed to 4.0. We'll talk about that in a sec. So it looks like their priority now for 3.9 is getting the AI flying around and navigating in atmosphere and in space, but obviously paying attention to their surroundings. It will be great to see AI pilots flying around landing zones, maybe populating the landing zones with haulers coming and going, and eventually this will lead on to public transport, being able to catch a lift from Microtech over to another area, like a domestic flight to another area of Microtech, or maybe from New Babbage to Hurston's Lawville, all of which will be very useful in the long run. Now, anyway, moving on to gameplay, there are a couple of new additions here as well. The player interaction system improvements, so this lets the player select dialogue options, interact with props, and generally interact with the game, including providing player feedback when items can't be used, adjusting the UI elements to scale or place correctly with the geometry and key bindings, so when you're trying to put things down. This, I believe, will be using the actual UI wheel that we've seen recently, and hopefully include the ability to remove our helmets and carry them under our arms. Very excited for this. It's just going to make it so much more easier to navigate around, as things are a little difficult when it comes to interacting. So this should, with the inner thought stuff, so this should remove that a little bit. Also, new targeting methodology. This is scheduled. It's fundamental changes to how targets are tracked on and off screen with UI updates to improve the visibility of locked, tracked, and returning of pinned targets. This has likely come due to the flight experience team, which is the new team working on everything to do with flight. Plus, with the new UI, it will hopefully enhance the way that we target ships, making it more intuitive and less cluttered, because it's difficult at the moment. Next one is high-speed combat, also scheduled. Basically, it says ship systems will suffer the consequences of traveling at high speed, restricting some of the options that players will have at maximum velocity, creating a vulnerability that will push players into engagements at lower speeds. So they have mentioned recently that they intend to slow down ship combat. It does sound like one method they're going to use will be the use of components and techniques based on the speed that you are traveling at. Having to slow down to be more effective in some way will hopefully bring in a bit more tactical gameplay. We'll just have to wait and see. Next up is Law System version 2 Surrender. This is at 1 out of 4 tasks complete. This allows players to be arrested, so giving us the option to surrender by coming to a halt, powering down our ship, at which point it says the security forces will cease their attack and arrest the criminal players on board the ships, impounding the ship if owned by a criminal. Now, I don't know, and I don't think this means the AI security will board our ships. It kind of sounds to me more like we're just going to have an automated event once we've powered down, that the player's view will fade to black and you'll just reawaken a prison. It does obviously lend to bounty hunters and their missions, which will be a nice addition to it. Next one is prison missions. We've heard about this before. This is at 24 out of 78 tasks. These are missions set inside the prisons, maybe requesting things like smuggling items or taking someone out. We'll have to wait and see with that, but it's going to be keeping us entertained while we're locked up. PvP bounties. Now, these are now in the polishing phase, and it's additions to gameplay to allow players to hunt other players with bounties on their heads. What these additions are, I have no idea, but for any bounty hunter out there, it's bound to help. Bounty mission NPC improvements as well. This is also polishing. This will enable the NPCs with bounties on their heads to use quantum travel to evade players, so it should make it a little more interesting, a little more difficult to track. Player status system version 1, we know about this. This is at 6 out of 44, so there's still a long way to go here, but it brings temperature, hunger and thirst to the player, meaning we need to pay attention to what's happening to us. Now on to ships and vehicles. So the Prowler is now in 3.9, it is at 12 out of 54 tasks done. I have expected this pushback from 3.8 to 3.9. The Carrack is still slated for 3.8. sometime in February, so fingers crossed that still remains there. It hasn't moved on the roadmap, but yeah, the Prowler is now coming in March, which it kind of was anyway, but instead of it coming sometime early March or middle of March, it's going to be more March, April. Anyway, the Origin M50 improvements, that's still scheduled, so no movement there. On to core tech for 3.9, there is a new addition called Weather Locomotion. This is new and it is scheduled. Basically, this is how the player will physically react to various weather conditions. So, for example, maybe putting a hand up to cover the face if it's blowing strong winds or raining, which is going to be nice. Not really a massive gameplay asset, but it is going to look cool and immersive nonetheless. So, there's a few changes on 4.0 as well. For locations, the Orison landing zone is at 211 out of 313. Now, this is the main landing location of Crusader, which the planet itself is still scheduled. So still a few tasks remaining for Orison, but I don't think they will struggle to get this landing zone out for 4.0. It will be very interesting to see what they can create for Crusader, the planet itself. And once done, it'll be then on to Pyro and getting that system built out a little bit. Anyway, on to AI, the FPS combat weapon types and cover usage version 1. This is now on the 4.0 stream. Both of them moved from 3.9. For gameplay, there's a couple of new additions to 4.0. We have body dragging, which is in the scheduled state. And as you probably know, this is implementing the initial functionality for the player to move an incapacitated or dead NPC by dragging the body around an environment. Now it specifies NPC. Hopefully it'll come into the place of being able to move players around as well. But it's nice to see this on the roadmap. It will be very useful for when bounty missions require players to incapacitate another NPC or another player and place them in their holds and take them to prison. Also, ship HUD rework, which is new for 4.0. This is scheduled, and it says, as we adapt all our in-game UI to the new building block system, we've taken the opportunity to redesign the ship HUD and make many much needed improvements. Now this, personally, I feel is one of the best updates for the roadmap. It means for all players using ship HUDs, it should be easier and actually work correctly, but it also could mean that for multi-crew ship stations, the functionality is more accurate and a little more rewarding. So it's a long-awaited fix, and I'm very excited to see what happens with our HUDs, because obviously it affects anyone who's flying a ship. So good news there. Also, death animation improvements has moved from 3.9 to 4.0. Now onto weapons. I think all of the weapons slated for 3.9 are now in the 4.0 build. The Lightning Bolt Co, ASCAV, Electron Sniper Rifle and Pistol, the Gemini C-54 Ballistic SMG, and the Clausen Werner Sledge Mass Driver revision are all now 4.0. This also means that the GP-33 grenade launcher has gone from the roadmap. This, I think, was slated for 4.0. It is no longer on the roadmap. So there's a lot of things that have been removed temporarily, some of them, from the roadmap completely, while they work out their approach and figure out better dates for them. These are the repair, refuel and restock kiosks, the commodity transfer timers, the accounting app, the economy display terminals, NPC improvements to civilians, door system improvements, atmospheric combat, zero-G push and pull, NPC healing, and FPS combat and flight AI improvements and polishing are all temporarily removed while they are being reassessed. Now for the Cutlass Blue, this has been removed, but they are having ongoing discussions about when the Cutlass Blue's gameplay functionality will come online. So that's why that's removed. The dynamic mission system, economy generated missions, and the mission generation along quantum travel routes has also been removed because this work was transferred to a different team, and that team needs to determine where it fits within their priorities, so it will reappear when they come up with a date. Finally, the multi-crew features, which is expanding the pilot and turret gunner roles, they have also been removed as they do not accurately represent the work that they're doing. They say that we can expect a more accurate version of these cards to reappear once they have reevaluated the work needed. Annoyingly, I have done a video on those too, so I'll have to redo that once we get it. But it sounds like they are really focused on figuring out what approach they want to take. When it comes to multi-crew, the building blocks UI is a big part of this, I'm sure, for when we have the HUD update. So fingers crossed we get to hear about that relatively soonish. So that is it for the roadmap update. Personally, I'm not too bothered about what has slipped or removed. I am excited for 3.9 and feel that there is enough for me to get stuck into. And obviously with the new additions of things like ship HUD rework, the surrender, the player interaction system, amongst other things, I think 3.9 and 4.0 are looking quite promising. We are still awaiting, as I say, the 4.1 and 4.2 builds on the roadmap. I'm excited to see what CIG's direction is for the latter end of the year. However, I do think it's pretty irrelevant as things can change so drastically in the space of a year. So they're not entirely that useful. They're more just guidelines than anything else. Anyway, do let me know what your thoughts are on the roadmap. Make sure you follow me over on twitch.tv/supermacbrothers as we will be chatting about this on Monday's stream. Over the course of next week, I will probably break down a couple of features into separate videos, so be sure to hit subscribe for more Star Citizen content and like that video if you are excited for the Carrack's release. Big thank you as always to my patrons. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.